Hello and welcome. This is episode 3 of the Everything Endurance podcast, and Kris has led me to believe that we have a particularly special guest this afternoon. So tell me, who have we got?
Well, let's just give you a few of her achievements and let's see if we can kind of guess who it is. So we've got the 6633 ultramarathon, overall winner, course record holder, female world record holder for the joggle, running from John O'Groats to Land's End. She's done the Comrades. Heard of that one?
Yes.
Yeah, not just done it, but
Comrades.
doubled it. So she did a double Comrades. First female and fourth person to ever achieve that. She got a new course record, the Grand Union Canal. You've heard of the Badwater as well? That ultramarathon. Badwater?
I've come across the name once
She's
or twice,
done the double Badwater, so
Okay.
she ran there and back as well. And then the Spartathlon, one of those hard, it's one of the hardest races in the world.
Oh, it sounds absolutely
She
impossible.
did that twice as well.
Oh, yeah,
so
okay,
she's come back there. So she's ran all of the miles, I should think, that there are to run. She's also completed all 4 of our races in our series, and the second female ever to be a Grand Slam holder on that. It's the marvellous Mimi Anderson.
Hey, hello.
Hey. Makes me sound quite good, doesn't it, when you say all of that?
Well,
Yeah.
It makes you sound quite good. I think it makes you sound quite good because it is absolutely exceptional. By the sounds of this, you don't like doing just one of something, not just one Badwater or one Comrades Marathon. We're going in and we're doing it at least twice.
Well, I think my doubles actually started because I've done the single Badwater, but I wanted to do Comrades. My friends kept on saying, "Come on, Mimi, you've got to come out and do Comrades." And my husband wouldn't let me go out to run 90k. He said it's way too expensive. So I thought, well, the only way around that is to do the double. No female had done it at that stage. So that's what I did.
So it was economic considerations that led you to do the Comrades Marathon twice?
Yeah.
Times are hard, Will. Times are hard.
We're in a recession. This is what it drives people to. Well, look, this is an incredible opportunity for me to talk to somebody who, I would have to consider myself a complete fanboy of Mimi Anderson. Yours was a name I heard a lot when I first came into contact with Beyond the Ultimate and first came into contact with the ultra running scene when I was someone who knew nothing about this. So I got to say, personally, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you this afternoon.
Oh, thank you.
No worries. Okay, so as somebody who very much started into this scene because Kris King twisted my arm up my back and sort of forced me into becoming a wannabe ultra runner, what led Mimi Anderson to the achievements that you've achieved?
Well, a bit of a fluke, really, I think. I started running simply because I wanted thinner legs. And so, back in the dark ages, so 1999, there really wasn't. There was nothing on the internet. There weren't that many races in the UK. In fact, very few. And there wasn't this fantastic community that we have now. So I didn't even realise, it's embarrassing now, that marathons and half marathons existed. How naive was I? But anyway, so I knew nothing about the running scene at all. So I literally got onto a treadmill and started walking and running. And then I eventually went outside with some friends and did 10 miles. And I just sort of rather loved it. It just made me feel totally alive, being outside and, being free. It was the most amazing feeling in the world. And from that, I then did a few sort of half marathons. And then I got introduced to the ultra running world when a friend of mine handed me an article and she said, "Mimi, I think, this is going to be our next race." And it was the Marathon des Sables. So that's how I got into it. And again, for me, it wasn't about the running as such. It was an adventure. I love adventures. And with 3 children, I didn't really have an opportunity to have many adventures. So that was my first chance, really, to sort of, grab it and just go. And it was fantastic. Well, it wasn't actually. It was bloody awful. It was awful. But I finished it. And I just remember thinking, God, Mimi, if you can finish that feeling that ill, because I was incredibly ill during the race, imagine what you can do if you're feeling 100%. And I think that's what's driven me to just see what I am capable of doing.
But I mean, that's absolutely incredible. That's quite the step up to have sort of jumped from half marathon straight up to the MDS.
I know.
But this is also in a time where the information wasn't out there. So it's not like now how you could go onto a forum and just check out everything that you need to pack and everything. I'm guessing that there was quite a lot of unknowns for you going into that at the time.
Oh, totally. I mean, we had there were three of us in the team, so all girls. And, we didn't have any idea how to train at all. We knew nothing about sort of nutrition and even kit. In those days, there wasn't really the specialist kit that we have now. So, we went off to Nike, I think, to get all our clothes, which, as it turned out, was absolutely fine. And we made up our own training program. And actually, if you now compare what we did to the training programs and things now, we had it spot on. So, we did everything right. But my goodness, it was trial and error. And, we made it up as we went along, actually.
Well, it seems to have worked out quite well for you.
I know, it was quite good. I was quite lucky, actually. I managed to persuade somebody to sponsor us. So we were able to go out to Lanzarote for a week's training. And we turned up at this the camp there, and we were about to go out for the evening. So these three women turned up with, our makeup on and our high heels. And we'd arranged to meet this personal trainer who was going to give us a program for the week. And I think he completely wrote us off. He looked at these women and thought, yeah, and they're going to run across the desert? I really don't think so. And so he set us this actually quite tough program for the week, which was absolutely fantastic, just what we needed. And he did apologise to us afterwards and said, I really didn't think you'd be able to cope with the training program, let alone the desert. So I think we proved him wrong, which was quite good.
Would you say that's something you've run into quite often, that assumption that you wouldn't be able to do these things?
Not by the running community, no. I think, once I got to know some fellow runners and things, no, not really. I don't think anybody, I didn't feel anyway that people thought that. It was more my friends who didn't run. Again, when I did the MDS, one of the things that kept me going was thinking about all those people at home who didn't think that I would succeed, because they didn't. I liked my makeup, I liked my hairdryer, and I liked to wear high heels. I can't wear high heels now because they're very uncomfortable. So to suddenly go out and camp in a desert and race and be dirty and smelly and everything, to me was fantastic. But to them, I think they thought, maybe you'll give up after a few days. So it drove me that, bit harder, just to prove that actually, doesn't matter whether I like baths and showers and makeup and things. Why can't you have both, so I didn't really, no, I didn't.
No, fantastic. I mean, it's a very supportive network, and I'm finding this for the first time. I guess as close as possible. I'm maybe back where you were before the MDS, where I'm only starting to now touch on the edges of the ultra running community and realizing that there's sort of a friendly ear everywhere that you go, which is fantastic. And obviously, I'm now speaking to a much bigger community than you probably would have been at the time. I'm surrounded on Facebook at all times, which is absolutely lovely.
Great. It's quite nice not to have Facebook.
Yeah, they don't know how lucky they've got it, these youngsters, eh? With all this information.
I mean, honestly, all this, no hardship at all. It's all there. Just click of a button.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a race one day in the future and not tell anyone anything about it. They've just got to turn up. So it'll be like the old days.
No hardship at all.
Like James, his piece of string race.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah. That was fantastic, because you had no idea how far you were going. So actually mentally, that's a sort of, you couldn't really plan a huge amount, because you just had to sort of arrive, turn up with as much kit as you thought you had, and then off you go.
Will's looking confused, Mimi. I feel like you need to explain to Will this race.
It basically, you turn up for this race, and it could be anything from a mile to over 100 miles. But you didn't know when the was.
The look on Will's face, Mimi, is just pure disgust.
Yeah,
there's a man that likes
far.
to lay out everything in order, and the fact that something could be so random like that is making him sweat a little.
I'm a very anxious individual generally, and the way I prepare myself for anything like this is I have to know what's going to happen and when and how long it will take and where I will need to be, and that I've packed 3 of everything. The idea of turning up with no idea, just that's terrifying to me.
Oh, it is. Oh, you see, I think it's part of the adventure.
Yeah, I think that's a trait me and you share, Mimi. I suppose a lot of people do. There was a similar race around here where they played bingo, and whatever number they pulled out, they had to run. And there's loads of weird and wonderful races now, which is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, no, it's great. So you should try them.
So as well as the community not being massive when you started off, I suppose you've got to see that grow and flourish over the last couple of years. There seems to be quite a big growing in numbers of female participants as well now. Do you think that is something that's going to continue to grow? Do you think that there should be more ladies in ultra running than there are currently?
Oh, I think it's definitely will continue to grow. I think, again, I think the year that I did the MDS, so that was 2001, there were 12 women from the UK. That was it. And I think a few years ago, there were, 46.
Yeah.
So it just shows how much it's grown, and that's just in one race. And, you've still got the majority is obviously still men. But no, I think it will continue to grow. I think it's fantastic. I think it's more women who can do the running or do the ultra running, the better. Why not? You can share childcare. Lots of couples actually run together, which is quite nice. So there's no reason why women can't do it. I think sometimes they get put off perhaps with going out and running trails on their own or in the dark. They might be sort of perhaps a bit frightened, in which case, buddy up with a friend and do it with a friend. But definitely should be more women. And I think the trend will continue, that more women will sort of enter or, and then have children and come back to it. So, no, it's great. Fantastic.
Yeah, we totally agree with you there. We had a very good turnout in our jungle this year. We had a big swarm of female participants, and every single one of them finished. They kicked ass. The girls absolutely ruled the jungle this year, which was great to see. And
over the extreme distances, it seems like a much more level field. Like the men and the women at the top of this particular sport absolutely compete on a level. I think that's fantastic.
No, absolutely. And I think also the women tend to be more sort of relaxed is the wrong word, but the guys sometimes can go out and sort of go out in full throttle. The testosterone takes over. Whereas the women, yes, they're fast, they're good. The women at the top, I mean, my goodness, they're just extraordinary, fantastic. But they seem to be sort of slightly more level-headed about it all, because, of course, we don't have the testosterone, so it's much better. So we race slightly differently, but it doesn't mean that we're any less competitive in what we want to do or what we want to achieve.
I can definitely back you up on that one. I think our most competitive people have been female over the last couple of races. Now, it's great to see. And what do you think would get more ladies into ultra running? Do you think there's any kind of particular things that need to happen, or do you think it's just a matter of time before they kind of go up naturally anyway?
Well, I think it's going up naturally anyway. Everything is much easier now in terms of sort of getting into running. There's much more, obviously much more on social media, This Girl Can and various other campaigns that go on, running buggies when you've had babies, much easier. So, it is easier to get into the ultra running. You've got many more races now, so that racing is much more accessible. And they don't have to be the really long stuff. You can do 50k, 100k. It's much easier to sort of do. So you're not taking a whole week out. You can just do it over a weekend. So yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of running groups or female running groups as well, which is quite nice. Because I think sometimes women can feel a bit intimidated going to a race where it's predominantly men. And I mean, I used to look around sometimes. I mean, I'm an old fart now, so I don't really, it doesn't really matter quite so much. But I used to turn up and look at all these women and think, oh my God, all these men, and think, oh my God, how am I going to run that far? And then they all go off, and then slowly you overtake them and think, oh, okay, I can do this.
Too much testosterone.
Yeah, now I just take my Zimmer frame, so that's all right.
Well, yeah, that sort of brings us round to a point. You are working towards a very big project at the moment, are you not?
Oh, I am, yes. It was supposed to take place a year ago. I was supposed to be, my aim is in September, to run across America to try and set a new Guinness World Record. It was supposed to have been done in September last year, but due to a sort of a knee problem, I had to have knee surgery, basically. And so I'm now doing it in September. So I'm still rehabbing, but I've only got a couple of weeks to go. So I am running, which is quite exciting. It has been, I think 2016 for me has been possibly the worst year in my life in terms of running. I found it really, really difficult. Running is a big part of my life. And I know when I said in one of my blogs, it's not the be all and end all. It certainly isn't. I have a great family and lovely social life and things, but I do love my running and I have missed it. So yes, America, here I come in September. Quite excited, actually, in a nervous sort of way.
Well, yes, I can understand. Even someone of your stature being a little bit nervous of this one. We're looking at, what was Pete Kostelnik, somewhere around 70 miles a day?
He was doing about 72 miles a day, yeah. And you just look at that, and he was like... he was like a machine, wasn't he? I mean, I am not going to be like that. I'd just like to put it out there. I'm not going to be like that. But I don't, thankfully, have to run that many miles a day, because I don't think my body, could ride it. I haven't got the speed to do, he's naturally a much faster runner than me. So you have to be able to do, a certain amount of a good pace, really, in order to get the sleep. Because if your body doesn't get the sleep, then accumulative tiredness, and you'll be knackered after about 2 weeks. You just wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, that would go for a normal human, but I mean, we're doing our own investigation at the moment, but we're not entirely sure that Pete Kostelnik is a human, looking at the numbers that he ran last year.
No, but I have chatted to him, and he's a very nice guy. So, but no, I mean, what he did was absolutely, it was incredible, and he had a very good support team who looked after him. They all sort of had their roles. So, and I've got a good support team for me. I haven't yet finalised them yet, actually, but, the people I've got so far are fantastic. So that makes a big difference.
And, injury aside, how do you feel in the run-up to something like this? Because looking at your running CV, not to come back to it again, you have literally, as far as we can tell, run all of the miles that there are. Are you intimidated by the project ahead of you here?
It terrifies me sometimes. You can't go into something like this and not be terrified. It's just under 3,000 miles. It's a hell of a long way. I mean, in fact, I'm looking at a map now, and it brings me out a cold sweat, actually, just looking at it. But the other part of me is I'm very excited about it because, can I do this? Can I, I have visions of me crossing the George Washington Bridge. Now, if I can get to the George Washington Bridge, I have 11 miles to go, just over. I think it's 11.2 miles to go to get to the City Hall. It makes me feel emotional just sort of thinking about that. And so that's what I have to picture in my head. So I won't be thinking of the whole distance. I'll do one day at a time. Some days are going to be absolutely awful. I'll feel awful. The next day I could feel fantastic. The scenery will change the whole time, which will be amazing. And it'll be an adventure, but it'll be hard. It will be a hard one. I have to believe that I'm capable of doing it. Otherwise, I would never have signed up for it in the first place. And I do believe that if the body holds out, I can do it.
We think that too, Mimi. Looking at your record and knowing you personally, I think that if anyone's going to break this record, you're the one. So we're very excited to follow it anyway when it happens and leading up to it and things like that.
No, good. Well, I shall sort of, the training, I'll start picking up my distances, hopefully sort of, end of this month and beginning of February, and then sort of, start then doing the proper training. So, no, I am excited. The planning is, planning is like, it's quite hard. I almost need another company to sort of take over and do all my planning for me, actually. But, so far it's taken 2 years, just over 2 years, just to get it as far as we've got it now. So it's, it's not just the training, it's everything else that goes into it.
And what sort of logistics are we talking about to put something like this together? What are you having to put in place before you even set foot on the road?
Well, first of all, the route. I then have to break the route down into sort of daily chunks. All this has to be mapped. And I've been out and actually we've recce'd most of the route, which has been fantastic. So I've actually driven across America, which, that took 2 weeks, for goodness sake. I need to have a motorhome that sleeps 6 people. So it's a 31-footer I've got. I need crew of 5 minimum. I think 4, I know Pete did his with 4. I think 4 isn't quite enough. I think so 5 is a good number, but one of them hopefully will be a sports therapist. So that has to be put in place. I need an official starter and finisher. I need 1, possibly 2 other vehicles. So 1 to support me and 1 to run errands or in case it's, the other one breaks down. It's just that the list is endless. GPS, I need a tracker, I need money, I need running kit, trainers, there's a huge list that goes on, medical stuff. It's absolutely massive. And that's even before I've got to pay for everybody's flights, everybody's food, everybody's accommodation. It's a very expensive trip. So, it's not something to be taken lightly.
No, absolutely not. Would you say this is the sort of the pinnacle of your running career?
Yes, I can retire after this.
You'll never retire.
I can't imagine that.
You'll never retire. You can't do.
I can then start relaxing a bit there. Yeah, I think so. It's something I've always wanted to do. I did joggle. I didn't think I could run 840 miles. I did Ireland because I wanted to, a female had that record, so I wanted to see if I could, break that. And in fact, that world record was fantastic. It went really, really well. When you have a race that goes really well, and you just feel when you get to the end that you really couldn't have pushed any harder. Well, that's how I felt with.
You just had a country go well. Just had a full country go well for you as you started to run. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I think, America is really the country to run across, isn't it? I know you've got Australia's bigger or you've got Canada, but I think America is the one that, to me, is the one to do.
Yeah, and that record stood for a long time before Pete took it, right?
Yeah, 1980. His record stood, and the female record, funnily enough, stood from was set in 1979 by Mavis Hutchinson, who is a South African lady. And you look at her, when she went out and did hers, there were no Google Maps, there was no, she literally had to turn up and almost make the route up as she went along.
Just head east.
Yeah, and I think she wasted something like half a day, I can't remember now, I have read her book, waiting for the mayor to turn up because he's in a meeting or something, so he couldn't turn up. So she could have finished earlier, actually. So silly things like nowadays you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You'd get somebody else to come and do it if the mayor couldn't be bothered to turn up. But so very different now compared to 1979.
And just a whole different world back then, I suppose, for her to do that. Quite incredible. And there's a book on that, did you say? She's wrote a book.
Yeah, she's written a book. I can't remember what it's called now. It's lovely. It's a really nice book. She was an incredible lady, actually. Because again, back then, women, especially in South Africa, didn't do long distance running.
Yeah.
And she was banned from various races for quite a few years, I think 10 years or something.
Well, yeah, we'll put a link to that, but we'll find out what it is. We'll put a link in the bio as well, because I'm sure some people would like to read that.
There you go. There's some homework for me. I'll get googling that once we're finished here. Given your tendency to double up on your other races, is there no chance of you getting across America and turning around and going back?
You see, now you're being funny now, aren't you, Kris? No,
that wasn't me. That was Will.
No, that was Kris.
Oh no, I just think there could be a Forrest Gump moment, surely, when you cross the Washington Bridge, get there, and then think, I might run back now.
Oh, can you think? Oh no. I'm lucky to get to the steps of the City Hall in New York. It will be an alleluia moment, and there will be no desire to turn around and run back. I think my crew actually might have a bit of a mutiny, because they need to have a normal life as well. So
yeah. They might have to put a roadblock on it as you start to come. Just if they're not listening to this, because obviously you haven't got your support crew, just make that joke when you get to the finish line, and they won't know really if you're joking or not with your past history. So they just watch their faces, and it'll be quite a good thing to see, I should imagine.
I think we might have a mass exodus from the steps.
If you do that, please do film it for us. That would.
I'll put it on Facebook Live if I can work out how to use it.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit selfish here for a moment. Getting the opportunity to talk to somebody with your CV, and being someone who's just starting out in this world myself, I'm going to hijack this whole thing for a minute and ask, what advice would you give, based on your experiences, to somebody who's just starting out in this? I mean, I ran like my first 10Ks at the end of last year, and now I'm training to go out and do the Ultra in February. So what would you tell me? What should I do?
Well, I think, you've given yourself long enough to sort of train. I think it's a lot of people might go into something and not give themselves enough time to actually build up to the race that they're doing. So, it's building your distances up nice and slowly. Go out and do the training with some friends, because that's great motivation. Sometimes, you think, oh my goodness, I've got to go and do 25 miles or something. And the thought of doing that on your own can sometimes be quite daunting. But actually, if you go out with a friend, so you need to take Kris out with you, see, and go running. But it's all about, it's making it fun. Running is fun. It's not a chore. If it becomes a chore, then you're not going to enjoy it anymore. So, yeah, build your distances up slowly. Run on the similar terrain. I know it's quite difficult for the Ice Ultra because you can't, but, run on similar terrain as you would do for for any race that you're doing. So perhaps you could go and run on some sand. But it's enjoying it, and I think hook up with friends as well is also quite nice. And go to the gym, do cross training as well. So it doesn't all have to be about running; it's cross training as well as running. But just being sensible, listen to your body. Have recovery weeks every 4 to 6 weeks, so you've got a week where you slow down your mileage and stuff, because your body needs to recover as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would have to agree with that bit. My body definitely needs to recover. Kris is working me pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, Robbie always says, sleeping and recovery is just as important as your training, and he's absolutely right. It is. If you don't get the recovery, and your body just can't cope then with the training, so you're then constantly going on a sort of backward journey rather than the forward journey.
Yeah, and it seems to be a constant theme across. Robbie has said that. Shane said that in the podcast as well. That a lot of people make the mistake of not resting enough and overtraining and doing too much volume and too many miles, and it just kind of is always going to have a bad effect on you in the long run, isn't it? So if someone of your mileage is saying that, then if you've done all these miles and you're telling people to rest well and things, then people should listen.
I'm willing to take it on board.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that I've gone out for a run, and perhaps I need to do 15 miles, so I head out, I shut the door, lock the door, head out down the trail, and I'm about half a mile down, and my body's going, do you know, Mimi, I'm really not enjoying this. Nothing's working, from the feet all the way up to the head. Nothing is working. So I turn around and I walk back to the car, and I get into the car, and my dog looks at me and goes, excuse me, what are we doing? What happened to our run? But but it was the right thing to do. You know, I can go out and do it the next day. You know, plans are adaptable. Training can be adaptable to a certain extent. You know, if you're injured, give yourself enough time to recover. Don't be stupid and run through an injury, you know, which lots of people unfortunately do.
Given that I've got, you know, 4 days of frozen tundra and the biggest mileage I've done in my life ahead of me, what mentally, how do you prepare yourself for that kind of distance? Because I couldn't conceive of doing 50 kilometers in a day when I started this process. How do you mentally prepare for something like this?
Well, I think the first part of the preparations in your training. So in your training, you would do some back-to-back long days building up so that you mentally, you know what it feels like to get up the next morning and do another 20 miles or another 15 miles. You know, obviously you're not going to do the same distances you're going to do in the race, but it's good to know that, you know how to do back-to-back runs. So mentally, that's the first one. Also, just take one day at a time. If it gets really tough, one checkpoint at a time. So just do the 10K to the checkpoint, get your water, refuel, move on to the next checkpoint. So you're breaking it down into small, manageable chunks rather than thinking, my goodness, I've got 230 kilometres to run, or today I've got 35 kilometres or 60 kilometres. I'm never going to do that. Well, of course you can. You know, start off. Oh, sorry, that's right. That's my husband's got. That's all right. The 60 kilometres suddenly becomes manageable if you break it down into 10 kilometre chunks.
Okay.
You know, you get halfway and you think, oh, done 30 kilometres. You know, another 10, that's 40, and then suddenly, before you know it, you're there.
And what should I be looking forward to? What parts of the race am I gonna enjoy? Because at the moment it sounds like a bit of an ordeal.
Oh no! Mind you, it's not nice falling into the water. I didn't like that bit. It's the scenery. You know, you're in a place where not many people will go. That's quite exciting. That's an adventure. You see reindeer cross right out in front of you. That's amazing. You know, you're in this fantastic sort of white landscape. I mean, it is stunning. And, you know, you're going through these beautiful woodlands, which, or I don't know, they're forests, I suppose, that have, you know, they're so laden with snow, the trees, that they sort of arch around, sort of down, sort of in front of you. And it's stunning. It is stunning. So around every corner is a view. Even if you're going across a flat lake, you can see into the distance, and it's lovely. Although don't pick up. Somebody thought they dropped their raisins one day. It's very funny. And it turned out to be reindeer dropping. So just, you know, advice. If you think it's just your raisins, just leave them there.
I hadn't heard that one. That's absolutely brilliant.
But it is amazing. You know, white, or the snow and the ice is completely different, obviously. That's a stupid thing to say, Mimi, from obviously the heat. But it is just as beautiful as racing in a desert or the mountains. It's stunning.
You can really hear your enthusiasm for the scenery as well when you say that, and that makes the whole thing sound a lot more palatable. But also, you're obviously someone quite focused on these amazing views and these amazing places. I mean, where would you say have been your favourite places to run?
Oh, I don't know. That's so difficult, isn't it? Because each race is unique, really. I do love Africa. So racing in Namibia, I've done that twice now. For me, was fantastic, absolutely amazing. It's such a beautiful country, and you know, the first race I did, we ended up climbing to the top of Dune 45 and then running all the way back down again. That's just amazing. How many people have done that? And we finished the race by going up this big dune called Big Daddy. And it's massive. It's famous, I think. And you run down into this. It's a valley. It's not called a valley. It's called something else, and I can never remember what it's called. But again, it's one of the 1,000 things to see in the world before you die. But it's just fantastic. You know, you go off and have these amazing adventures around the world, I mean, even in the UK, we have some amazing scenery in the UK. So you go off to the Lake District or the Pennine Way, it doesn't matter. And you come home and everybody else's life has just continued the same. But you've been away for 5 days, 10 days, having an adventure of a lifetime. Not many people really, realistically, get to do that. And I think that's fantastic.
You've kind of took Will back now. He's looking up and he's rather excited now. You've got him all fired up. So
no, this is absolutely true. I'm looking forward to having some stories of my own now.
Yeah, I mean, you must have some cool stories for family, right? Your family, younger family, start taking interest in what you do. Have you managed to get them to get as excited about adventure as you?
No.
No.
Well, that is unfortunate. I mean, we were kind of hoping to put together an inspirational podcast here. You tell me this isn't going to have any effect.
No, my son actually, who is now 29. So my children have all grown up and left home. But my son came out with me as part of the crew to the Arctic race in 2007. And that was fantastic. And I think for him, a real insight into what I do, and he loved it. And then my grandson, who is now 8.5, he loves running. He's a very good runner. So he thankfully, at the moment, thinks that I am the fastest runner in the world. Long may that last. He does 5Ks and things, and he just loves them.
Oh, good.
So I do have one member of my family who likes to run.
So we only need one person to continue and carry on that legacy.
Excellent. I've got one.
Start them young.
Yeah.
So I mean, what we've got the Transamerica next. There isn't actually that much time to train for that, is there? Really, when you think about it, I know this probably is going to make you maybe a little bit nervous again, but September isn't actually that far away in the whole grand scheme of things, is it?
Oh, for goodness sake, don't say that. I've got a countdown actually on my iPad. And so it's 7 months and it's just under 8 months to go. So in the scheme of things, no, it's not. But once, this training sort of starts picking up, the actual training for sort of America itself isn't hugely long. So I'll be doing quite long distances anyway. I think Pete was doing 200-mile weeks.
Yeah.
I won't be doing that. I mean, I'll do a few weeks where I'm doing long, but actually for me, if I go too high, then I'm more prone to sort of injury. So, I mean, everybody's slightly sort of different.
Yeah.
But no, it isn't that far to go. Thank you for reminding me. Not that I'm going to panic. I'll start waking up in the middle of the night now. It was completely...
It wasn't for that reason. It was more just to kind of probe into, what does the training plan look like? And that was, you kind of answered my next question in terms of volume and things, because I know that one approach is, like Pete's approach, is to kind of just hammer volume and volume and volume, which leaves you kind of exposed to these risks of injury. But I suppose on something like this, you'll adapt as you go along, won't you? You'll get used to it and get fitter as you go. So are you going to kind of come in to this event with slightly less miles under your belt in the hope of that, or are you going to kind of come into this with some high volume weeks just before?
Oh, no, I mean, I'll come in with the high volume weeks. So I think, you can't, I don't think you can't go into this sort of under-trained. I mean, I know your training will go as you improve as you go along, but you have to go into this trained, because I have to be able to do a certain amount of mileage in a certain amount of time and get the sleep. So if I don't put the training in and the miles in, my body's just not going to be able to cope with it at all. I mean, they say that it takes 2 weeks or so for your body to get used to doing that sort of distance. Now, I can't do that in my training. I think Pete was doing 30 miles a day and perhaps longer at weekends. So I probably won't be doing quite as much as that. I don't know actually what my training plan is yet. I haven't spoken to my coach about it. I'm chatting to him on Friday.
Right.
So no, I'll go into it properly trained, because I think you have to. You this is a very serious run, and I'm not taking it lightly. I'm putting my heart and soul into this, and that includes my training, because otherwise I won't deserve to even I won't deserve to get the record. So I have to work for it.
Do you think there's an element of luck involved as well? I know that Pete and Adam, a friend of mine, Adam Kimball, I think you got to speak to as well, didn't you? They both kind of went into this with heavy mileage, few little niggles and things like that, and they kind of both said that around, I think Adam's was about day 6, I think Pete was about day 8, day 9, that they just had that kind of day where it was like it could have all ended. It could have all ended there and then just because the mileage was too high, and then they made a decision either to rest slightly or to do this, and it just kind of kept them in it enough for that change to happen. Do you think that they were lucky in that respect? Do you think that there has to be that element of luck in order to do something like this?
I think to a certain extent, it's not luck. I think it's how it's how your body copes with it, doesn't it? It's sort of, that constant sort of 70 plus miles a day. I won't be obviously doing that, but doing the constant mileage every single day is a huge. So, one day you might wake up and your calf is playing up. Well, the next day it could be your thigh. And then the next day you wake up and think, oh, actually, there's nothing wrong at all. So I think it's managing your, if you have, like those guys did, you obviously go out there with a plan. My plan is to do it in under 53 days. Now, that is a big ask. But plans have to be adaptable. You have to be able to change things as you go along. It might be that on one of the days, actually, I can't do the mileage. I physically can't do it. So the crew will say, okay, Mimi, let's say 40 miles today. That's fine. We'll adjust it. And, they then work all of that out. I don't have to bother with any of that. But, there will be days like that. It's not all going to be plain sailing. So it has to be adaptable. Whatever we got in place at the beginning will no doubt have changed by the time we've got to the finish. I might surprise myself and be able to do even more mileage, which I don't think so.
Well, I think if anyone's capable of it, like we said earlier, it'll be you, Mimi. So I can't wait. I'm going to
say, I don't think we'll be getting a lot of work done while you're out there doing that. We're just going to be watching your progress online.
Oh, it's going to be so slow, isn't it? When you follow this sort of pink dot as it starts going across America, and you finish day 1, and I think I've gone a long way, which I have, and everybody else is looking at the map going, gosh, she's going slowly. She's got an awfully long way to go. And I think the interest doesn't really start getting, building up properly until you start getting towards the end. Because I know that happened with Joggle. People weren't particularly interested in it until, well, they were, but the interest built up as I got closer to the finish.
Yeah, I suppose that goes back to a lot of people thinking that it can't be done, or they might have seen a lot of people try it, and then as they start to get towards the end, they think, oh, actually, these guys are gonna do it, and they want to follow the process. I'm pretty sure you'll have a big following right from the beginning. You'll definitely have us shouting for you. That's for sure. So you can rely on us for that.
Because, that'll keep you going as well. I think, if you've got the support... I won't have my phone, actually, with me. My crew will have the phone. Because I think that's a distraction I don't need. Mm. But, it's knowing that you've got people sort of cheering you on and sending you messages and doing all of that, I think. And to the crew, because they need it as well. It's not just me. I think that's, be fantastic. And it reduces me to tears. If I read any messages, that's it. My emotions just, I'm one of those people that just, my emotions come out with me bursting into tears. It's not because I'm miserable. It's just because that's what I do. It's pathetic. I could get my own swimming pool with my tears, I tell you.
Well, just to sort of bring things full circle a little bit, one of the first things we asked you about is why you got started into this. But looking at the Transamerica, this is an aspect of the ultra running scene in general. There is no Olympic medal for doing this. There's no £1 million prize for getting to the end. What is it, or why is it that you would take on something this big?
I do it for me, actually. I do. I prefer. I seem to be better at sort of racing sort of by myself. Does that make sense? I'm sort of better if I like organising my own things. Running to me isn't just about entering races and getting the medal and things at the end. It's about doing other things. I ran across South Africa there was no medal or anything at the end of that. But my goodness, what an adventure I had during that. I mean, that was just mind-boggling. That was fantastic. So my run across America is, I do it for me. I don't care whether there's a medal or a prize or whatever it is at the end. I do it for me. And also I think it's nice to show people what the possibilities are. The possibilities of, can people, well, we know that people can run across America, but, what can be done? What is the body capable of achieving? And hopefully inspire other women to think, well, actually, Mimi started not being able to run at all, and she's now running across America. Well, perhaps I can do that. So one of the reasons I want to, I'm running across America is, obviously doing my charities, but is also I want to try and do a campaign where I'm raising and getting people to go on their own journey. So over the 53 days that I'm running, what can they achieve? What can they do during those 53 days? So they're going on their own journey. So between us all, everybody around the world, we can all sort of inspire each other and keep each other going when we all have dark days. By logging in and sort of doing our own thing, and that can be anything from a 5K or a 2-mile walk or learning how to skip. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's just having your own journey. Learning how to ride a bike as a child, that's always quite difficult, isn't it? It doesn't matter about I never do it. I don't do it for prize money. I do it for me to see what I can do.
Oh, fantastic. I think what you're doing and the runs you've done up to now are pretty inspirational. It's certainly had me as, one of your biggest fanboys wondering what I can actually achieve as well. And if there's one thing that anybody listening to this takes from it, is that you should go out and do this sort of thing as well. And we know you will as well, Mimi. We look forward to watching your progress over September.
Oh, no, thank you. Fingers crossed, eh?
We'll have everything crossed, we assure you.
Oh, brilliant. Good.
Well, thanks a lot, Mimi. Thanks for giving us some time today to talk to you. We're going to put all of the links to your website and social so people can follow the journey and stuff at the end of this podcast, so people can see it there. And I'm sure we'll speak before September, but if we don't, have an amazing time. And we can't wait to see you as you run across that bridge.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it gets me feeling quite emotional just thinking about it, actually. That's my sort of, having a bad time, think about the bridge. That's what I'll be doing. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Have a great day. And you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.